Well, we had, for the first time in our hands, a long-range interceptor. It was clear that the F-4 was designed to fill a very deficient gap. We had entered a period when attack was high speed. We needed standoff. We needed quick responsiveness. We needed a all-weather capability, and that's what we achieved in the F-4.
If you had it to do all over again, is there anything you would do to change the design of the F-4 or the test program?
No, I wouldn't change a thing.
Hey guys, Spud here, and today we're going to take a look at Electro-Optical Guided Weapons in the new DCS F-4E Phantom II. Electro-Optically Guided Weapons were first pioneered during the Second World War by American and Nazi scientists, and came of age in the late 1950s with the invention of the AGM-62 Walleye by US Navy scientists and contractors at the China Lake Range Complex in Southern California. The US Navy's electro-optically guided weapons research was pursued in parallel to the mostly USAF-headed Paveway laser-guided bomb program. While both LGBs and EO-guided weapons were used extensively over North Vietnam by both services, the Navy's favoring of Walleye allowed US Navy pilots to hit targets in the always marginal weather conditions of North Vietnam that precluded the use of the Paveways and BOLT-117s favored by the USAF. The Heatblur rendition of the F-4E Phantom II is capable of employing both the US Navy's AGM-62 Walleye 1 and 2, as well as the USAF-developed GBU-8 HOBOS, or homing bomb system. Even though the Walleye may not be your first choice in the modern FA-18C, while flying the F-4E and EO-guided weapons all-weather and fire-and-forget capability compare very favorably to the finicky and crew workload-intensive Pave Spike targeting pod and Paveway series of LGBs. We are currently flying a Japanese Air Self-Defense Force F-4EJ, loaded with 2 Walleye 2 ship killers. We've been invited to participate in a US Navy Sync-X exercise with 2 decommissioned Oliver Hazard Perry class frigates that should make some nice big, high contrasting targets for us. Alright guys, welcome to the cockpit of our F-4EJ over the Western Pacific. We'll start off by setting up our cockpit for the employment of EO guided weapons. This will apply to Walleye 1, Walleye 2, and Hobos all the same. So we'll first start off with the DSCG panel, which is where I always like to start off my flow for cockpit prep. We'll go to the air-to-ground mode for our LCOS, and we'll set a depression of 20 mils for our reticle to slave the pipper dot to essentially the field of view of our Walleye 2s on our wings. We'll then move down to our station select buttons, and we're going to only select a single Walleye for now. Let's drop it off of our left inner pylon first. We'll go master arm on, and then we'll go to direct mode on our weapons release panel. We're already in TV mode by default on an air start in the F-4E. We don't have to adjust anything on our AWRU, and then we'll come down and we'll put our DSCG panel over to TV mode, so we can get the TV feed from our AGM-62s. One thing to definitely keep in mind is there is a 3-minute warm-up period for your EO guided weapons, just like your AGM-65 Mavericks. So ensure that you conduct the steps that I just conducted right when you fence in and you're on your way into the target, so that way you don't have to fly around orbiting the target area waiting for your weapons to be ready to rock and roll. Next, we'll go ahead and pull the aircraft off of autopilot mode. My IP for weapons release is about 15 to 12 nautical miles away from those Oliver Hazard Perry frigates that are down there for us to hit today. Clear out the master caution from that autopilot reset. And once we pop out of this little squall here, we should be good to go. Alright guys, before we continue here, let's take a quick look at the keybinds you'll need to employ EO guided weapons in your F-4E. There are really only two keybinds you need outside of your normal flight controls in order to employ a hobo or a walleye. The trigger, in order to command a lock-on of that EO guided weapon onto that contrasting target, as well as the bomb button to press and hold to release the weapon once you've achieved a lock on the target. And that's all you need, guys, so let's hop back to the cockpit. Coming down to about 12 nautical miles, and we're pointed right at our target waypoint. So let's roll over very gently, and we can start to see our targets out there. So technique-wise, and this is technique only, you can do it however works best for you, is at this point when I'm pretty far out and I'm not ready to actually start to attempt a lock-on by my walleye or hobo onto the target down there, I'm flying off of the pipper here. I'm trying to get the pipper onto a target, or at least real close to it. Then I'm going to trim the aircraft out, so that way I can go pretty hands-off and have nice light control pressures. You're going to want to be flying with using your fingertips, all of that good stuff, to have a real light touch on the controls, because things are going to feel very, very sensitive when you start to come down to your DSCG scope here, and you try to actually attempt that lock-on. So let's go ahead and unpause again. I'm going to try and get my pipper as close to one of those ships as I can, a little bit of nose down trim to help myself out. Then I'm going to press and hold the trigger to command the walleye to attempt the lock-on. So at this point here, we can see we've got our crosshair right on top of that frigate down there, so when I squeeze the trigger, it will most likely get a lock-on onto that target. One thing to keep in mind here, guys, is the walleye is really dumb. It is not a smart weapon at all. All it knows is that it sees a difference in the color between the ship down there and the background sea behind it. And it's looking for and going to track the color difference between the background and the target it's tracking. So it doesn't know that that's a ship that we want to kill. All it knows is that is a two different colors, and I want to track the difference in that color. So we'll go ahead and squeeze the trigger. And when you see the crosshairs kind of snap to that target you're wanting to actually lock onto, in a similar fashion to the AGM-62 Maverick you're used to in other modules, you know you've acquired a lock-on. At this point, you want to keep holding down the trigger in order to keep the weapon locked onto the target. So when it comes to the flying technique of this, I like to go ahead and bring my left hand off the throttle and use my left hand to press and hold the bomb button in order to release the walleye or hobo. Keep in mind, just like any other bomb or glide bomb, whether that's a JDAM in a modern jet or a walleye here in the F4, the higher you are and the faster you are, the better the range you're going to get out of that weapon system. For a rule of thumb with the walleye here in the F4, I don't like to release the weapon any further than about 15 nautical miles, no matter how high I am, because otherwise the weapon may run out of energy and fall short. When it comes to the hobo, because it doesn't really have very large glide fins, I recommend releasing the bomb a bit closer to the target than you would a walleye. So let's unpause and we'll start the pull out. More evidence that you have a lock onto the target is going to be this small black box that you can see kind of representing where the weapon is looking in relation to the nose of your aircraft. So when it comes to that, think of the nose of your aircraft represented by the very center of the crosshair on the display here. And the walleye is starting to look down below your nose as represented by that black box. Now, if that black box travels too far to the edge of the screen, the lock will be broken because the target will be outside the field of view of your walleye. So at this point, we can actually get ready to drop the weapon. We're pretty close to the target, so I'm almost certain that the weapon will be able to glide to and hit our target. We're almost 500 knots here. So we'll pull up slightly and press and hold the bomb button, and weapon is away. At this point, because it is a fire and forget weapon, just like an AGM-65, I can go ahead and pull off the target here, so that way we can avoid things like AAA, SAMs, man-pads, things of that nature that we definitely don't want to stick around for. And as you can see, we're flying through some pretty crappy weather here that would probably preclude us from using the Pave Spike pod in a situation where we need that precision afforded by an LGB or an EO guided weapon. So let's take a look at the progress of the weapon here. Boom. Got him. An AGM-62 Walleye 2 has a 2,000-pound warhead in it, and it was originally designed as a way to kill Soviet warships during the Cold War, and so it has plenty of power to be able to punch through and to sink almost any ship here in DCS world. So we'll set up for another pass here. We'll turn off the left interstation. We'll turn on the right interstation. And by doing that, we can kind of see a bit of a difference between the Walleye and the AGM-65 in the F-4E. With the Mavericks, you have to actually squeeze the trigger in order to activate the camera or the IR seeker head in that Maverick. With a Walleye or a Hobo, it just comes on automatically when the weapon is powered up. So we'll build a little bit of separation here, and we'll re-attack the second frigate down there. Alright, so going back to the technique we talked about earlier, at first I'm going to fly the jet via the LCOS, and then as we get closer and want to start attempting a lock-on, then I'm going to start flying the jet via referencing the DSCG scope. We're pretty well trimmed out, things are feeling good. A little bit of an obscured target here because of the smoke and the rain, but we'll start to attempt that lock-on. So I'm going to squeeze the trigger. There we go. May have to go around here. There we go. We've got a lock. Press and hold the bomb button. And weapons away. And we're going to pull off the target. We're a bit closer to a very threatening warship down there that is probably bristling with AAA and SAMs. So we are going to be pretty aggressive with our pull-off away from that target. When it comes to anti-shipping missions, this is probably going to be the best weapon in your inventory in the F-4E due to that large warhead and the ability to have a fire and forget capability, so that way you can target the ship and then get out of there as soon as you possibly can to get out of the range of things like naval OSAs. So I hope this video was interesting for you guys and informative, and I hope it helps you out in the future. And if you liked the video, please give a like and a subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one. Fly safe out there, guys, and enjoy this beautiful game and your brand new F4.